What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bridging the Geekdoms. I'm your host, Robert Slavinsky, and today, do I have a show for you? I say that all the time, I know, but this one I was really excited for. I had an amazing conversation with Jason Ward from MakingStarWars.net. He's kind of a Star Wars insider who's been in the game for the better part of a decade now, and I wanted to sit there and just pick his brain about how he became kind of a Star Wars insider, where he came from, his love of Star Wars, all the way up to how he became what he is today. So please enjoy the show. Sit back. If you're a Star Wars fan, I guarantee you're going to like this one. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, all that jazz. Share this with all your friends because this is an interview you don't want to miss. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Jason Ward. Jason Ward, who is the editor-in-chief of MakingStarWars.net, also the host of the YouTube show Making Star Wars, and apparently you're a big Star Wars fan. So
Nah, never heard of it.
So what's going on, man? What's going on?
Yeah, just doing the daily YouTube show lately, digging that more than the blogging aspect for whatever reason. So I kind of just been focusing on that.
I noticed over the past, we'll get into it a little bit here. I've noticed over the past few months, you've been really focusing a lot on the YouTube aspect of your brand, I should say. But what I've kind of tried to make these interview shows about is getting to know people who have turned their love of something nerdy, geeky, whatever, and turned it into being creative in some form or fashion, whether it's being a blogger, being a video blogger, being a cosplayer, whatever it is. And that's kind of the whole idea behind this. So where I want to start, and we're going to kind of work our way up to what you're doing and what your plans are. I want to know a little bit about Jason and where you came from and how you fell in love with Star Wars and all that.
Yeah, so I was probably about 3 years old, and I'm walking down the stairs of my apartment with my mom, and there are these kids that are probably like 6 years old. They seemed huge to me, but they were probably 6. They were probably still pretty small. and they're playing with Star Wars figures. And I see this kid, and he has the AT-AT driver, AT-AT if you're a millennial. And I'm like, I want that. I'm all, what is that? My mom's all, oh, that's Star Wars. And then she's like, they're making Revenge of the Jedi or Return of the Jedi, something like that. And I'm like, oh, I want to see that. And so after that, it was sort of like far off. Like it was too big for me at that time. And then I always wanted the figures and the toys. And I just got really obsessed with it, like as a small kid. Right. And I'm on like the tail end of the original trilogy generation. I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater. That was my theater experience as like just turning 4 at that point. And after that, it goes away, and I'm like, hey, where is it? When's it coming back? What are you doing, George Lucas? And started following Indiana Jones. And I'm living in Long Beach at the time. I pretty much lived in Long Beach most of my life, and Long Beach, California. And yeah, and it just goes away. But the obsession never left me. I started going to like flea markets in the 90s where all of the college kids were selling off all of their Star Wars toys and their like collections and stuff. And like that was just kind of where I ended up finding my I don't know, a way to be a fan. But nobody else liked it. I ended up with like pretty much every best friend I've had throughout my life has been like the one person who likes Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's like, you like it too? And then we're like best friends. And yeah. And then like, obviously it's a lot different now. I mean, pretty much it's everywhere and everybody likes it. And I think that's great. But those were the dark times.
I'm a bit younger than you are. And I don't know if I'm going to say I was lucky, but I have to say I was pretty lucky. I got into Star Wars around 95, 96, and I was about 10 years old there. And that is, for me, in my opinion, sitting here at 35 years old now, taking a look, that was the boom, in my opinion. My brother, who's 8 years older than me, lived during the original trilogy. He had all the toys in the 80s, did everything in the 80s. For me, in the 90s, I got to see the re-releases, the THX re-releases, and then the special editions came out. Then we had the Phantom Menace and then the Attack of the Clones, and it just kind of built from there. The Power of the Force toy line was phenomenal. And for me, it was even at that time, even though it was so big, it was still you would, "Are you a Star Wars fan?" "You are? All right, we're friends." And
Yeah.
it was still that nerdy thing, though, back in the 90s. People still looked down on you if you, like, regardless of how big it was, you were still looked down upon, and that has absolutely changed today.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, you take a look at social media, TikTok or, whatever, Instagram, everybody is showing off their love for Star Wars. And I don't want to sit there and say, oh, I give credit to Disney, I give credit to this. I just think it's the time,
Hmm.
because people are things are so much more accepted today, and people are so much more willing to show off their love for things. And I think that's kind of why it's happened like that nowadays. But I can agree. I mean, I was in the 90s, and while it was big, it still was one of those nerdy things like, hey, you like it? Oh, sweet, let's be friends.
Yeah, yeah, and not to get like overly political or anything like that about it, but it's good capitalism when you get down to it. I mean, like this idea that like people should be shamed for being enthusiastic about spending money on stuff that they love and consuming products and films and music from something that they like.
Yeah.
So yeah, the world had pretty much a vested economic interest in turning that upside down, making it okay for men that are 35 years old to go to Target and buy action figures. Like it's, you know what I mean? It was, and it wasn't always that way you were pointing out, but it did kind of like in the 90s, like the early 90s, there was sort of like the 70s were kind of like revered, and there was sort of like a nostalgic looking back kind of thing in like the punk scene and the indie music scene and skaters and stuff like that. And I think that like it kind of permeated from there of it being okay for it to be cool.
Hmm.
And so I think you had all of these different places where it was the VHS tapes. That's where people started seeing it again, and it was like really like, oh, I do love this. This is for me. There just wasn't any reason to like talk about it. And then once you got to like Power of the Force 95,
Yeah.
that's when they're like, oh, people really do care. And then we get to the prequels, and obviously the prequels were a weird time for Star Wars, love it or don't, but it ends up like where the people who were being the most critical of it were being critical because they loved it,
Hmm.
which is a very good message if you're Disney, I think. It says like, if we buy this,
Yeah.
if we just make it how these people want, they're going to be happy. Of course, there's no pleasing everyone.
Yeah.
And
No, yeah, and that's kind of a big thing. I think Disney, they've done a pretty good job of that over the years, and just realizing and understanding, look, we're never going to please everybody, but we're going to just do what we want to do. And they've kind of done that. And regardless of what anybody thinks about the sequel trilogy, whether you love it or hate it or indifferent about it, they're pushing forward with Star Wars in a way that I don't think we would have ever seen under George Lucas. And that's not to say that Lucas wouldn't have done some bold and ambitious things. I mean, he had plans for that television show. He had some other things in mind. I'm not saying that we wouldn't have gotten some pretty cool things, but I think it was a blessing for Disney to buy it and to kind of give fans so much more to grab onto. I just wish they marketed it better. That's
yeah.
my only thing. You take a look at we were just talking about the 90s with Power of the Force. Those toys,
Mhm.
you couldn't go into any store. You could go to a grocery store, a department store, even like the big department stores like Penny's and Macy's and stuff. They had the action figures. They had them everywhere. You're lucky to find 5 action figures at a department store today. So
You're lucky to find 5 at Target today,
yeah,
and there'll be the 5, and if they have 5, it's the 5 same ones. Very
exactly,
weird.
exactly. I and it's unfortunately I was trying to stay collecting during the sequel trilogy, but by the time the third movie came out, I just didn't
Yeah.
care anymore because the figures, first off, the figures just didn't look good, and I've always been for the smaller figures. I never liked the Black Series figures, and
Same. Yeah, I
And
mean, you are the same. That's how I started, and it just doesn't feel like it to me when they're the
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And then the price has gone up. They're 9, almost $10. I don't know how much they are over there. Over here, where I'm in Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
they're $8, $9 for the small figures.
14.99 for some of those card backs with like the original trilogy looking cards and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Eh, eh,
not for
they're
my kids. My kids better get a job if they want those.
exactly. And it's just the marketing because that was the probably the most fun aspect of Star Wars. And I kind of split it up now between the Lucas era and the Disney era. And
Mhm,
during the Lucas era, it was the fun of, oh, these toys, there's always something new coming out, at least from the 90s, from when I started, from the 90s all the way up to 2012. There was
mhm.
always something new, even if it wasn't a movie or a television show or a cartoon. There was books, there were action figures, there were toys. It was just so much fun. And I just don't get that in this Disney era of Star Wars. And it's a shame because I think what they've started doing, especially on the Disney Plus side, has been some really great things
Mhm.
and has opened up a future that is probably brighter than it's ever been. But how can I get my kids excited when it's like, yeah, there's something coming on Disney Plus in a year from now, so get excited. They don't care. They want something in their hands right then and there, and there's just nothing for them.
Yeah, yeah, the, like, rollout of everything is what I'm hoping that they fix in the future, but it is looking better, I'll say, like, with all of the TV shows that they have slated right now,
Mhm.
but that strike, if that strike goes through,
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about it about it today, but if that strike happens, I think that could make it sparse again,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. Strikes are the worst, and I don't wanna wait anymore. It's been honestly, I mean, we had the Bad Batch, but besides that, and not saying anything, I actually really enjoyed the Bad Batch more than I thought I was going to enjoy the Bad Batch, but,
Me too.
uh
I was ambivalent, honestly, before. Like,
yeah,
trailers came out, I saw them, I didn't even put it on the side, I was like, "I don't really care." It
yeah,
just doesn't do anything for me, and then I started watching it, and I'm like, "Okay, this works." It's not the best Star Wars, but it's in no way is it bad or is there anything wrong with it, and I did enjoy it too.
yeah, and that's kind of I'm okay with stuff like that every once in a while, but
Mhm.
I want if it's, like, something like that, then I want an Obi-Wan or a Book of Boba Fett or a Mandalorian next, and then I'll take another something that's not too exciting. But we had Mandalorian season 2, which was phenomenal, gets you so hyped, and then it's
Mhm.
just nothing. It's just
Yeah.
nothing, and it's just so disappointing. And I think that's kind of what happened with this Disney era is there were Kathy Kennedy was so ambitious. She was like, okay, we're going to have a movie every single year. We're going to do this, 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 this. And it worked for like 3 years. And then they're like, okay, okay, it's too much. And I'm
It was honestly, it was too many cooks.
see, and
Too many cooks spoiled the broth is the what
that's the
happened there.
problem because
Mhm.
I don't think it was too much. I think that in this day and age, you can get away with if the studio is willing to spend the money. You can get away with a movie every single year in the Star Wars universe. I
Oh,
think you
yeah.
can get away with a movie every year as well as ongoing shows on Disney Plus or wherever you want to have them. But like you said, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There just wasn't enough direction from one person saying, okay, we're going to do this over here, we're going to do this over here, we're going to do this over here. And Kathy Kennedy gets a lot of crap. But what people need to realize is she's not just the head of Star Wars. Like she's the head of an entire studio. That's kind of a
Yeah, well, it's like they come up with their rollout. Like
yeah,
they know what they want to happen. Like they want The Last Jedi to come out. Then the next year, Solo, a Star Wars story. But then you have Bob Iger step in and say, "Oh, but what if we do it in May? What
yeah,
if we test the waters and see what and it does connect?"
mhm,
And then so then they're like, "Oh, okay."
yeah,
And then but I will give her the one thing I give her the most credit for is it's not what you don't want to fire anybody like
yeah,
Trevorrow, the Lego Movie guys, you know. But if you have to, she's done it. She's done what needed to be done to make
mhm,
sure. And so far, Episode 9 has been my least favorite Star Wars movie, probably of all time, to be honest with
mhm,
you. But It's still not as bad as other franchises. I won't offend anybody by saying which ones I think are way, way, way worse. But I still give her some credit for the fact that that thing was still at least on the rails.
Do you listen to podcasts that sound like this? Hey, welcome back to the Super OK Podcast, where our audio sounds mediocre.
Or do you prefer podcasts that sound more like this? Crisp, clear, fun, easy to listen to, and full of awesomeness? Well, you should check out Spoiler Country, hosted exclusively over at Spoilerverse.com.
So, I mean, there's no debating that we have to sit there and question your your love. But what is it that got you to or decide to do a website or to start blogging? Like, what led to that?
So it's kind of a sad story in a way. It is a sad story, but there's a good side to the story, I guess. But basically, I think it was 2011, and I was finishing up my master's degree, and so I'm super busy, and my wife at the time became pregnant, and so I was like, okay, so here we are now. We're going to have a baby, and we're going to name her Hannah. And we went all the way up until the day they were going to induce her, and then we lost the baby to an umbilical cord accident. And so super, super rough, obviously. And so I'm like, I have to finish my thesis as this happens. Not the best combination in the world of life experiences, I could say. Not one I ever want to go through again, or hope anybody else ever has to. But so I'm very depressed, obviously. And I just kind of, the only thing that made me feel, I don't know, interested in anything was Star Wars production photography. Just behind the scenes photos, for whatever reason, that just made me.
What year was this?
This is 2012. This is 2012 now. And we lost her in 2012. And so basically just looking at behind the scenes photos, I already had a large collection of them. But for whatever reason, that was like, I couldn't really watch movies. I couldn't enjoy music. I didn't really even enjoy watching the Star Wars movies that much, to be honest with you. Like, just, nothing was really working. The photographs worked a lot, though. And so my wife at the time says, you should put them all on Tumblr. And she was just like reading Tumblr stuff all the time and everything like that. And I was like, yeah. So I opened up a Tumblr, and I started slapping the photos that I had. And some I scanned, some I just collected off the internet over the years, and just slowly started doing that. And with no intentions at all, it ended up becoming a very large Tumblr, because I was just very consistent. And I knew when I did write descriptions or I did talk about the stuff, I didn't know what I was talking about. And because I've just always been obsessed with Star Wars. So I had these two things coming at the tail end of grad school. And I thought about this actually today, and I hadn't thought about it like in probably almost 10 years, is afterwards, one of my grad advisors was, how are you? And I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm all, on one hand, I mean, I'm really good. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was just like the worst that could happen to me has happened to me. And I feel like I could do anything now if I want to. Only problem is I don't want to do anything. But I was just not afraid of failure or anything like that in that moment. After that, I was just in that headspace where, I don't really care. Nothing bad could happen to me now. Not worse than what's happened. And so, so the Tumblr starts to take off. And then, as luck would have it, in the weirdest way, Disney buys Lucasfilm. And that announcement comes in the midst of that. And it's like, my first reaction was, oh, man. Oh, no. I was just like afraid it was going to be like the standard, the not the good Marvel movies, but the bad superhero style movies. I was like, no. And I thought about it for a few minutes, and I was like, you know what? There is an opportunity for this to be a lot cooler than what it is. So I was still on board, and I started writing articles on the Tumblr about, people started asking me questions about certain aspects of what I was putting up on the Tumblr. And so I took that, and people said, make a website. And they really wanted me to make one. And that encouragement. It meant a lot at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so we went and I bought a WordPress, and I set it up and started doing it. And it was kind of an interesting experiment in a way. And it was a good thing that I was in that headspace that I was in, because there was so much gatekeeping of the old guard at that time. No, I don't want to call anybody out or anything like that, but there was just a lot of BS that would go with it. But I didn't care, because in a way nothing mattered, if that makes sense. And then over the course of that, and of that evolution of from Tumblr to website, my then wife became pregnant with our son, who we named Luke. And with him, the pain didn't go away, but the depression did. And then there were reasons to be happy. Yeah, so that sort of in a big way for me broke that depressive spell, if you will. And then we also had a wonderful daughter who's a little punk, and she's great. Then I ended up with this website, and I was super productive because I was coming off of being in grad school and writing a thesis and stuff like that. And when you write about the economics of the poor in Orange County subsisting at a donut shop to find public space, and like that's what you're writing about for like 2 years. Oh, you're like, writing about Return of the Jedi is a breeze. It's great. It's I can do this all day, and that's kind of what I did. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what put me into that place to be able to do that. But I didn't start off as a spoiler person and delving into that world and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like, and I'm going to apologize real quick for my picture not being there. I've been having some really ridiculous internet issues with my upload speed, so I apologize. Normally, if I get rid of the picture, it runs a little bit better, so hopefully I apologize. Once it comes back up, I may throw my picture back on there, but my upload speed. But it sounds like to me, you're almost kind of like I was. I mean, you kind of really just latched on to Star Wars at a time of your life when nothing else was kind of there for you. And your knowledge, I'm guessing you probably got a lot of your knowledge from maybe watching or listening to the commentaries of the movies and stuff like that. Because for me, growing up, my father died when I was really young, 4 years old. My father died, and I was for years. I mean, I was 4, but as I started getting older, I was trying to find something that could just kind of I could focus on that would make me think of that. And Star Wars kind of was that thing for me. However, it wasn't showing or looking at, behind the scenes. It was actually getting into the movies and the lore and everything. And I dove so much into it. There was from 96 until probably 2008, 2009, there wasn't a piece of Star Wars that I didn't watch or look at or read or anything that came out, because I was just that invested with the product. It kind of sounds like, in a way, you kind of threw yourself into Star Wars, and that kind of really helped you out of the funk that you were in a bit. And I mean, I do, it's hard to even fathom what you went through at that time. But that's kind of what you were doing. It wasn't the spoilers and the leaks that you were doing, at least at that point in time. But what was it that got you so interested to do that aspect, to get to that point of, I want to do some spoilers here, some leaks here, that kind of thing?
Well, okay. So I was always into the production side. Like I thought as a small child, like Star Wars is magic. And then they would show the behind the scenes video on like ABC or wherever they were showing it on TV, like after the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is as cool as the movie. Like, to me, it really was. I wanted to see more of the monsters and stuff, and they were just showing it to you. I was always into it, and I was always reading I owned every making of book. And when the Rinsler books came out, I devoured those, obviously, and stuff like that. So I was just always, and I followed the spoilers from 1996 to 99 when the Phantom Menace came out, and all the way through the prequels. I followed all of the spoilers. I was always like to me, spoilers don't ruin a movie. They just
Yeah.
tell you what you're going to see, and then the movie is the movie. So it never bothered me.
That's how I
And
am. I'm
Mhm.
exactly like that. But I have to cut you off here. You're saying back in the 90s, you were looking at the spoilers.
Yeah.
I want people that are listening to this or watching this to understand that back then, it wasn't so easy to get information and spoilers. Like you had to go to chat rooms and different areas on the World Wide Web, I'll call it, just to differentiate myself. But it was a much different era for the internet. And it wasn't just like going on to Reddit or going on to Twitter or something like that. So what was it that you were finding? Like, how were you navigating? Because I mean, for me, I was like 11, 12. I wasn't doing that. The most that I got were the trailers. You know, my mom let me stay home from school the day that they revealed the trailer for the Phantom Menace on, I think it was Good Morning America. So
Mhm.
how did you get all that information?
Yeah. So, well, there was at back then at the time there was Dark Horizons, which I think is still around. Ain't It Cool News. There was a site called Red 5's Prequel Spoilers, a website. I think I said Force.net. And yeah, there were like, and then there were like, just like general film sites that were kind of around. And sometimes they would have information. Oh, and he became notorious, but Super Shadow was originally a real Star Wars site that had episode 1 spoilers and then evolved into self-parody and then I guess into ripping people off or something. It went to a weird place. I don't know the whole story with it. But yeah, so that was where I was just getting everything in the 90s, just like following it every single day. And yeah, I was obsessed with it and wanted to know everything and found the behind the scenes stuff was as oftentimes as interesting of a story as sometimes the movies.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So to me, there's always been like 2 stories with Star Wars, the making of and the released film. And so anyways, when we get to my era where there really aren't too many spoilers out there at that time, what I wanted at around 2013 was I just wanted Star Wars interviews. I just wanted to be able to interview people about Star Wars, people who wrote books, and it would be cool to get the books early so I could review them, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And like that was my actual aim when I started the website was, if I do start a website, I might be able to get some of the books early, and maybe I could interview the authors or people involved and talk about the making of the movie because that's what I was so interested in. But as time went on, I found it to just pretty much be a gate kept place for people who wanted to kiss each other's butts, to say it nicely. And I'm down to be nice, but I don't really want to kiss anybody's butt. And I don't want to be a performative fan either. There was a lot of that. If I act like I'm in tears and squealing over a cartoon character, like therefore you get a seat or whatever. And I was just like, ugh. I was writing the PR people. I said I really want to interview people about Star Wars. I really want to talk about Rebels when Rebels was coming out, and they first had offered me the interviews at Comic-Con. And so I get all ready for these Comic-Con interviews. And then I'm all the way down in San Diego. And I'm about to, I believe, go interview the cast of Star Wars Rebels. And I get a call from Disney saying, you know what? I'm sorry. This is for like Entertainment Weekly only, it turns out. I made the mistake. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm a reasonable guy. Mistakes happen. I was like, okay, another time. So then they reach out to me a bit later as Rebels is about to come out. And they're like, hey, we're going to give you 7 interviews. I'm going to get you back for Comic-Con. I'm like, oh, I'm elated. I take a week off of work, take my vacation that week, and I spend 1 day on each cast member pretty much, like making sure the interview is going to be tip top. Don't, this is my chance. I'm not going to take it not seriously. I'm going to do a good job. And then so we are invited down to I think it was the Beverly Hills Hotel. I can't remember what it was now, but it was a hotel, I think, in Beverly Hills. And go down there, up there, we're in the big room. R2 and 3PO are there. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then everybody leaves, and I'm like, where do I go? And then everybody just ditches me there. I'm just like left there. And I'm like, okay. So I start sending some emails. I get no response. And then I end up going down to the hotel bar waiting for an email because there's nobody on the floor I'm on anymore for more the big press thing was. And I'm like, where am I doing these interviews? And it turns so I go down to the bar. After it's over, one of the PR people comes down and says, "Oh, are you Jason?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I was supposed to." They're like, "Oh, really?" And gives me a hug and all of that stuff. And I'm like, okay. I'm still like, oh, I guess there was just like a mix up. I'm really kind of mad about there being a mix up on this one though. But I'm like, but mix ups happen, okay. So then day goes by and then I'm kind of pissed off now. Now it's finally starting to set in with me. I'm like, this is no, this doesn't make sense. And so I tweet out on Twitter, I have 50 questions for Freddie Prinze Jr. if any of you want to role play that you're Freddie Prinze Jr. Something snide like that.
Mhm.
And immediately my phone starts to ring. Disney saw it that fast. And the person from Disney is like, look, there's another website. I won't say who they are. They said they were very angry that making Star Wars was getting unprecedented access. She's all, that's what they said. And they made me cancel your interview. So Lucasfilm PR made Disney cancel the interview because another fan site was being competitive and throwing a tizzy. And mind you, this is local to me too.
Mhm.
This is like, it's where I live. So it's like this other site doesn't even live on the same coast.
Yeah.
So at that point though, as I like spoilers, and I had already been talking to everybody getting hired on The Force Awakens. I had already figured out which were the likely studios they were going to film at and talking to people who said Lucasfilm had been here to talk to us. So I knew every single place that they were going to be. And then I figured out that it was going to be Pinewood. And I knew everything about the movie at that point in time. And I wasn't spoiling. I was keeping it to myself at that point. I was like, I just wanted to know. That time it was about me. It was very selfish. and then after I realized there is no playing ball with these people, it's just not about that. It's about whatever they can use that person for.
Mhm.
Is what it was about. Like I want everybody to, I think everybody who has a site that actually does good work and works should be at every single Star Wars event that they have covering it, because it's free publicity. It helps them. I don't understand the gatekeeping mentality that they have. It's bizarre to me. But yeah, so anyways, I'm sitting there and then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get the interviews, but you know what? I'm actually doing my own interviews. The only thing is these people can't talk about what they do. we can't say who they are, but I know what's going on and what's going on with the productions. And I was like, well, if I can't play ball with them, I'll take my ball and play on my own. And that's what I started doing. They internally used it as like, see, that's why we didn't give that guy anything. We just somehow knew. It's like, oh, you didn't know.
Mhm.
I was really down to do what you wanted, how you wanted to do it, just to be able to write about Star Wars because I love it. It was like that easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a bit crazy with really, and it's not just Star Wars. It's a lot of studio, or not Star Wars, Disney or Lucasfilm. It's a lot of studios that they have their go-to outlets, and they
Yeah.
pretty much just stick to that. And when they can get, and I don't want to say it's a slanted view on things, but for instance, you are a fan, you are a big fan of Star Wars. If they're going to come to you, you're going to write, you're going to talk about it with excitement, with joy, with in hopes of getting everybody else excited. When they give these stories to these other outlets, especially the big name ones, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, all that, they're just putting out a quick little article, and it's just like, here, everybody, have fun. And to me, I've always sat there and said, I get it. You want as many eyes on this thing as possible. And, especially with smaller podcasts or smaller websites, you're not going to get as many eyes as you would on a variety
Oh,
article or something like that. But
not at all.
but
Not even close. Yeah.
they should still utilize them for little things here and there, especially people and like yourself who have been doing it for years, who
Mhm.
especially now doing it for years. You have a following. No, it's not anything crazy, but it's a decent following that you have some fans who are going to be their eyes are going to be on you. And if you talk about Star Wars, if you talk about it, you're talking about it with excitement. And that's what fandoms need. They need excitement. They need that joy that you don't always get with those big name outlets. You just don't.
Well,
And
and those big name outlets, they go and they read the fan sites to get like what their authentic nerd opinion is supposed to be.
exactly. And then those sites, they rely then on channels like my own or yours to
Mhm.
then talk about their articles. But it's cut out the middleman sometimes. And I'm not saying take everything away from those outlets because I know
Oh
it's
yeah.
important to utilize them. But I think there should be times where it's like, okay, we have something coming up. We have some new actors. We have some new, you know what? Let's reach out to some of these other sites, some of these other outlets that have been always showing excitement and love for Star Wars. Like, hey, can you throw me a bone? And there's no interaction, no conversation at all. And it's a
Yeah.
real shame. It really is.
Yeah, yeah. They basically they kind of once they figure out, oh, so and so at so and so won't will do whatever we want, then they kind of check out, and I think they just go on Facebook
Yeah.
after that.
Pretty much. Now, you got into the website back. What did you say? 2013,
It
14? What was
it
it?
was the website launched. I think it was either very late 2012 or very early 2013.
Now, what is it? Yeah, about 9 years now. You're going on,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I mean that's impressive. I mean to be running a site. And when did you kind of? Because I went onto your YouTube channel and I see you have things from like 7 years ago on there. But
Mhm.
it looks like a lot of your stuff was quick, little like 4 minute, 5 minute little snippets of like, hey, this is what's going on. See you later. Now, what made you consider doing that at all?
Well, what I was doing with the original YouTube stuff was simply it was supplemental material for the articles that I was doing.
Hmm.
It was like and it was because number one, I was like, well, the YouTube presence for Star Wars is abysmal overall at the time, especially going back. It was pretty much just people who didn't like Star Wars who were pretending to be Star Wars fans. But it made it where I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I want to do YouTube all the time. And and I was just like, well, I get visuals sometimes. Sometimes I do get
Yeah.
a video, something to put up. And I'm like, and so that's why I had the YouTube at all for the most part. And then around the time of episode 9, for instance, I started making videos on YouTube because when you're trying to write 300 to 1,000 words, and you could only say so much about what, like, I might like I heard spoilers last week. What I wrote was only what I was allowed to say in the
Hmm.
ways there were certain things I could not write and I couldn't say. And there were aspects in the name of better writing I could have done if I could have just written whatever I needed to.
Yeah.
But I had to be very guarded. And I started to feel like for episode 9, I think it helps when I did like spoiler videos, I did the article and then I talked about it because I think some people were able to see how I was talking about it and where I was guarded or where I
Hmm.
wasn't and what I meant. I think some people just understood that better.
Yeah. Oh no, I completely get that, and it's really hard. Again, coming from a background, I loved writing. I love writing, but I find this medium, whether
Yeah.
with video, I find it so much easier to kind of express myself and express what I'm trying to say. There's been a few times where I my podcast is part of a network called the Spoilerverse Network.
Mhm.
And on Spoilerverse Network, we do a lot of writing, and I'm one of the senior editors over there. And I started getting some, I'll call them rumors, because I don't like to talk about leaks. I don't like to leak anything. I don't like if somebody tells me something, I hold it for myself like you. I kind of just hold it in. Like, first off, I don't want anybody to come at me if I'm wrong. Secondly, I don't mind spoilers, and I know some people do.
Mhm.
So we started a little section on the site called the Rumorverse, and I would put some of these things on there. And some of those rumors, like when I'm sitting there trying to write it, it's like I don't want to give too much away. But then whenever I'm writing it, it sounds like I'm saying nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I found it a lot easier to just jump on my podcast or on my YouTube channel and say, so this is what I'm hearing roundabouts here, that kind of thing. And that's what I found to be a little bit easier. And I completely understand where you're coming from. And that outlet or the ability to utilize video has really helped, I think, a lot of smaller websites over the last probably 5 or 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Big time. No, it really does. It just makes all of the difference. And I am with you though. Like I'm pretty beat down and not much affects me anymore. But when I first started doing spoilers, oh man, it was stressful. Like I would put something out because it's like, you're just like, I thought when I put out my first spoilers, people were going to be like, thank you, Jason. We were wondering about this. We always wanted to know. And now we do, and we can have a conversation about it. Thanks, dude. But in reality, it was, who the F are you? You're a liar. This isn't what I wanted. Luke Skywalker is only in one scene. I'm going to find you, and I have a gun. I got that. And I was just like, really now? This is the world. Yeah, I had a couple of very, very interesting people. But it definitely like was not what I expected. And also the fact that you could tell some people everything and the big picture, tell them everything, and then just not make them happy. Like that was the part that was the hardest thing for me to. I was very optimistic about humanity. Mm-hmm. I really thought, like, you know what, people are reasonable. And I do remember back to the prequel era when there were message boards and stuff, and I remember being on the message boards, and I used to think like T-Bone at T-Bone Star Wars Universe. That was one of the sites in the 90s that I loved a lot. I was like, why isn't T-Bone ever here in the forums with us? Like, that kind of sucks. I'm like, is he an elitist? I don't think he is, but it kind of comes off elitist. I wonder if he is. And so I always said to myself, I was like, if I was him, I'd be like in the forums talking about Star Wars with everybody. Like, here's what it is, you guys. And so I tried to like do that. Oh, big mistake. Boy, did I learn a lesson. And I had to learn it a lot of times, unfortunately.
And now it's even worse with Twitter. I mean, Twitter makes it so bad, and being, whether you want to call it content creator, an interviewer, or whatever it is you want to consider yourself, anybody out there, Twitter it's unfortunately a necessary evil for this medium, because you have to promote yourself. You have to make a connection with your fans, with people who could potentially be fans. So you need to utilize social media, and Twitter seems to be the best one to utilize for this specific medium. But it also comes back to bite you in the ass, because there's so many times where it's like, look, here's my opinion on something, and I love what you love, but this is my opinion. And then they just come at you, and it's just relentless, and it doesn't stop until you just walk away for 2 or 3 days. It is horrendous. And there's so many times I'm like, I just need to get off Twitter. I'm done with Twitter. I'm done. But I always get pulled back in.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. If I didn't have to, in essence, promote my work, I would not be on it. I don't know why would I be on it? Like, it is not fun. Mm-mm. And everybody is out to whatever. It's like, I feel like there's only like pretty much 2 reasons for it. And the first reason is to get information about stuff that people like. And then the other reason is for people to say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I just being honest with you. And I've done both. I'm no better than anyone, but that is what it comes down to.
No, I've been on both sides of it myself. And I think what really kind of really changed my opinion on it is a couple of my friends who I was very active and very vocal about the release of the Snyder Cut movement. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of that Snyderverse content. Yeah. So I was very vocal and active in that. And I made some friends along the way within that. And they got hammered. They got hammered because they were trying to do scoops. They were trying to do leaks. They were talking about things. And again, things didn't pan out, and they just got hammered's the best way to say it. And I felt so bad because you sit there, it's like, look, they're trying to do something. I think maybe because I know them personally, I know they're not doing this to be malicious. I know they're not putting out bad information just to put out bad information. They're getting information they believe is true. They vet it themselves and they put it out there, and people just start attacking them when all they had was good intent. They're just trying to be fans like you and give you some information. And that's why like I said, that's why I've stayed away from that game. Anything I get, if I feel like, you know what, I could put this out and just say it's a rumor. If it happens, great. If not, whatever. But for the most part, I just kind of stay away from that.
Yeah, it's a super weird skill. I mean, like, and I don't think I would be as good at it as I am, and I'm not even claiming to be excellent at it or anything like that. But I think that I'm as good at it as I am because I did a lot of ethnographic work, which required participant observation of people and interviews. And so the whole time I'm just looking for the contradictions. What do people say and what do people do? And I'm doing this all during college.
Mhm.
And so when somebody brings me information about a spoiler, I don't ask them, why are you doing this? But you start to pick up context clues. You start to get a vibe, and then you get the information. And when and then the information has a vibe, and the way that people talk about legit information versus fake information,
Yeah.
like you know it when you see it. I think if you have that skill, and that's what's always so difficult, because sometimes people will come to me and they'll be like, hey, I'm hearing this. And it's like, can I see how you were told this information? They're like, no. And I'm like, I understand. But I'm like, from you, it sounds real,
Mhm.
but you want it to be real. And that's my thing, is I always treat everything like, what if it's not real?
Yeah.
And then it's only when I can't deny, there's just so many of the check boxes are there, that I'll move forward with something.
Mhm.
You know, and I've messed up before. I've made mistakes, or I've read things wrong. Like my big one was very early on. I had concept art of Kylo Ren holding the Darth Vader helmet,
Mhm.
but the concept art used Mark Hamill, but it was young Mark Hamill. That should have been my context clue right there. That doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
I was like, is this a clone? They're not doing that
Mm.
clone stuff, are they? And then I'm like, no, it must just be Luke Skywalker, and that's how he's going to look. And they're being very nice to Mark Hamill right now, pretending that he still is 30 years old.
Mm.
And it's just that they hadn't cast Adam Driver yet.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I wrote an article like, is Luke Skywalker the villain? But you could, and I got hammered for it hard, and
Yeah.
people for years hammered me for it. But it was rooted in reality, and you could see it.
And that was legitimately a theory for the first two films, because we only got that portion of him in The Force Awakens, so people then still thought he was the villain come The Last Jedi. As we're leading up to that, people were just, but again, when you have limited information, you can kind of go off of what you can go off of, and you live and you learn. I've
Yeah.
seen what you've said since then, and I've paid attention to your website. So a lot of things that you say have either come true, or while they may not be 100% accurate, they're accurate enough for me to say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. So
yeah. I like in the stuff I get wrong, usually you could see like where there's smoke, there's fire.
yeah.
But I might be talking more about the smoke than the fire, unfortunately. Sometimes that happens. That can happen.
So you've recently, over the past few months, moved into more of a live kind of presentation with your YouTube show. I'm seeing you're doing like hour to hour and a half long episodes where you and a couple people will be sitting there just talking about Star Wars. What led you to go that route as opposed to what you have been doing with the articles and the short little videos?
Yeah, I just like during the pandemic, I was just like, I did not feel like during most of the pandemic, just didn't feel like really getting into Star Wars. Writing was kind of hard to focus on. And then I was doing some side work, doing some ghost writing work that I am under NDA and can't talk about, but I was doing that stuff. So writing wasn't really in the forefront of my mind. I was like, it was like kind of like the last thing I wanted to do. I'm just trying to make sure that my, Postmates food doesn't get my family sick. And I'm just like, you know what I mean? Just like trying to keep everybody safe. And as that started to lit, I started to feel I really want to talk about Star Wars again. I'm feeling that like Star Wars bug. And I was watching $3 Theater. the YouTube channel, and
Nah,
he was just talking about Star Wars and stuff, and I was just like, I just turned it on, and I was like watching it, and then he was mentioned that they use, I think it was this StreamYard.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, that's like kind of, that seems really fun. About a year or two ago, to stream on YouTube was the biggest pain.
it really
You
was.
know what I mean? Yeah. You needed like I just did not have that amount of enthusiasm for it at that time to deal with OBS and all of this other stuff all going at the same time. I was like, that looks pretty convenient. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna jump on and try it. And I did, and then I enjoyed it, and then I liked having the conversations, and it was a lot like putting the podcast and the website together at the same time.
Mhm.
Like that was how I felt. And my podcasting partner about episode 9 just got burnt out on Star Wars, and I was like, so podcasts weren't really a thing. We weren't doing those anymore.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right. I was like, and then so I started doing this, and I felt like I was meshing podcasting that up. And yeah, I think this is the format for me, more or less. I'm not saying I'm not really like that good at it. I was always better with somebody else being like the host, and then me going like, here's the information, and making some off-color jokes that make people angry. Like that's what I did.
Any good co-host does. Let's just
Right.
say.
Right. And it's been kind of challenging in a new way on that front too. The fact of like trying to host and delve out the information when possible. But yeah, it's been challenging though to do the show every day. When I first started, I was like, oh, this is so easy, because I was so on fire, and like I hadn't done much in a while, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. But that's what I'm looking forward to next year, because there's gonna be so many Star Wars things coming out.
And that's going to make life easier. When you don't have a lot to talk about, it's really tough. I also have a Star Wars based show called Shooting the Sith.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to talk about. Like there really isn't. And I don't have any insiders when it comes to Star Wars. So it's really just like, I'll bring up information. I'll talk about something when I can, but it's not like we were between 2013 and 2019, where there was literally something almost every single week to talk about. We're kind of to the point where there's not much to really get a lot of conversation going with.
Yeah. Like right now, it's like, oh, this comic book is out. We hate it. Let's talk about how much we hate it for an hour. But luckily, a dude who I was friends with on Twitter for a long time was an artist, Rob at Sketchcraft. He's like, hey, I'll jump on with you. And when he jumped on with me, it was like, you know how you have like that person like at school or work where you like do the stop and chat, but you can't stop talking kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, he and I had that. And so it's made that really easy. And like today was a hard day, because once we got past the original news, there wasn't much like going on after that. But we turned off, and after the camera was done, we talked for like another 20 minutes about like just movies. We really should have just left the camera on and kept going, because you know, most of the people who are there for the whole show are down just to listen to us talk about movies and stuff.
Well, that's exactly how it is with my co-host and I. That's how we got started at work. We just started bullshitting at work one day, and we're like, hey, you ever interested in doing a podcast? We should do a podcast. And that's how it started, because we would just talk about it started with Star Wars. We started talking about Star Wars. It led to superheroes, it led to everything. And here we are now, what is it, 5 years later, and we've been doing a podcast, you know, it's amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, I think when you do things that way, and my old podcast, I mean, it was that way too. And it's like, I think when you do things that way, you really can't go wrong. And that's like one of the things about fandom that like drives me kind of up the wall, is like the gatekeeping types, and the people who think they can have the whole pizza pie.
Yeah.
It's a big pizza, and there's more pieces than anybody could ever have, because like I'll come on, and I'm not a radio voice guy. I'm just like, hey, I'm a dork. Here's what I think.
Yeah.
But then you have like Mr. Radio who comes on, and he's like, hey, how's it going? I'm Johnny in the morning, and all that stuff. And it's like, I can't do that. And there's people who love that.
Yeah.
It's not for me, but there's people who love that.
Exactly.
And we're never going to be in competition. The competitiveness is really unnecessary.
It's even getting more difficult. I mean, the YouTube channel and shows and podcasts are kind of becoming one. at this point in time. They were separate for quite some time, and you still have your YouTube content creators that do their 10-minute videos, but we're getting these long form content creators like this here, and the competition is getting tougher because now we're having these celebrities jumping into the pot and doing these podcasts and these YouTube shows. So for people like me, for people like you, it's getting more difficult because people only have so many hours in the day to take in this information, take in the content. And they're like, oh, this person, I like him in this movie, or I like that person over here. I'm going to listen to that person. Oh, he's a comedian. I'm going to listen to that person. And it's like, guys, stay in your lane. You guys got something already. Let us do something for once. It's really tough. But my buddy, editor-in-chief of Spoilerverse, he says it best. He goes, look, the thing that sets us apart from people like that is our passion.
Yeah.
We are so passionate about doing this. For them, it's become a quick buck because they're jumping on the trend. They're making some money. Some of them may stick around for a while. Some of them may not. But for the time being, they're jumping on this trend and trying to make a quick buck. Us, on the other hand, our passion is going to keep us going. Well, we're not making money from this. A lot of us just don't. And it's because it's a passion. It's fun. It's something we like to do. So I always kind of stick with that in my mind because I do get aggravated sometimes. And it's like, come on, like let us little guys have something.
Yeah. It's in a weird way. I feel like it's going to wash out being sort of like what, punk rock indie music kind of ended up becoming in the late 80s and the early 90s. You're going to have your Milli Vanilli types, your Joe Rogans, and then you're going to end up like with where, okay, I don't like that. I want something authentic. I want somebody who represents me. And then that's where I think we would come in. We are in essence the alternative punk rock music to the mainstream. and yeah, but you're right though. I mean, it was like when I first started my Star Wars podcast and I did some of the very first spoilers I was doing, I was like the third podcast in radio or TV and film on iTunes. I don't know if that's possible today.
No, I mean, well, there's just like 200 million. I know I'm over exaggerating, but there's like millions of podcasts out there now. It's insane.
Yeah, like all, and that's kind of where the problem lies, is that as you have 30,000 Star Wars podcasts, everybody's like, hey, let's make a podcast. Then they like do 2 episodes and then they don't do any more. Well, that's taking up the search space.
Yeah.
And one of the things I hope happens in the future is that places like iTunes and YouTube start to prefer the people who've consistently kept making content in that category or in that with those search terms, as opposed to letting it get watered down consistently. Because that's what happened with iTunes. It just became, I was getting 60,000 listens on a podcast, and by the end of it, I had just as much engagement when you got down to it on the site, but I was getting about 10 to 25,000 listens, down from 60,000. And and that just had to do with how podcasting changed, and with the rise of YouTube podcasting. And we even saw like H3H3 used to just be completely video shows, and now they're primarily a live podcast when you get down to it. And not that they're doing Star Wars content, but I think it does sort of reflect on the general media.
We talked about this before the show. I haven't gotten a chance to watch the entire episode, but I saw you got to do an interview with Ahmed Best.
Yeah.
And I do want to get just your quick thoughts on that, because he, for quite some time, was very hidden away after the prequels. And I know that he's recently, over the last couple of years, has come out and expressed all of what he was feeling coming out of the prequels, and even his battle, his demons that he had to face from all of that. So I love that he's out there again. I love that he's out there embracing the fandom. I absolutely love that. And he's definitely one person I would love to talk to at some point in time. But how did that come about? How did you get a chance to sit down and talk with Ahmed, and what were your feelings on that whole thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was honestly, it was just luck that he was doing his interactive play. And his, for whatever reason, his PR person contacted me and was like, would you interview opportunity or something like that? And I got the email and I answered right away. I was like, yep. Yeah, of course I do. I mean, like for me, I mean, like I I really truly do love all three Star Wars trilogies in different ways and for different reasons. But you know, to me, like Jar Jar is, I know how some people feel about him, but I don't actually feel that way about him. I don't know if they did any research or if they just got lucky in picking the one Star Wars show on YouTube that really likes Jar Jar. But I mean, like my only criticism of Jar Jar ever was just simply the fact that they pulled back on him. And
Yeah.
we invested heavily in the first one, and they should have they should have seen it through. That's what I think. But the ability to talk to somebody who was a main character and in Star Wars to that degree, that's like a dream. And a couple of days before that, I had pulled up at a light going over to the Mandalorian set, and Ewan McGregor was there,
Oh,
and
jeez.
I had a stop and chat with Ewan McGregor. And I'm like, wow, 1999 Jason thinks 2021 Jason's pretty cool. He's not, but it's completely, it sounds pretty rad to 1999 Jason right now, you know?
So what would you say if today you were to just wipe your hands clean of everything that you've done with making Star Wars, all of that? If you were to wipe your hands clean of everything, what would be the one aspect that you can hang your hat on and say, this was all worth it?
Well, okay, so to bring up punk rock again, the fact that one guy to some extent was able to get behind the wall of a multinational entertainment corporation and get all of the secrets out and bring it to people, that to me was super rewarding. And that's just the asshole in me. I mean, honestly, but it's true. I mean, that is the best part. And that is why I still love to do it. And I see the contradiction in the fact that I feel that way, and yet I still consume products and things from that corporation. I completely see the contradiction there. So not trying to be the punkest guy in the room or anything like that. But then obviously, I guess the big picture is that I just set out to do something and I did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, too, if I want to take the less controversial version of that answer, it's simply that I always wanted to get spoilers. I wanted to do it. And that I was good enough to be able to make the contacts and to find the people and to be available. And you know, there's a lot of people who say, stuff just comes to you. And it's like, yeah, but you know what? When it came to me, I was ready. And that's a big difference. That's the huge difference, I think. Is that,
the one thing that, and the reason why I love asking this question is because people, when they get creative, and this isn't a bad thing, everybody always looks at their goals. They look at what they want to do, what they want to achieve. And don't get me wrong, I'm the same way. My goal recently for my YouTube was get 1,000 subscribers, and we hit that this past weekend, which was
congratulations.
Amazing. Thank you. So we hit that goal. But the reason why I ask this question is because people often forget to look at what achievements they've already made and things that they can truly sit there and say, wow, I did this, I did that, this is amazing. And I love asking this question just because of that, because again, so many times people just are so caught up on where they want to go, they forget to look and see what they've accomplished thus far. And that's why I love asking that question. So
yeah. And no, and there was a time when I didn't see any of it. I hadn't caught up to myself. And then there was another time when I did. And then I was very full of myself, sickening. I think back on it, I'm like, oh, you were gross. But when you get down to it, I have met hundreds of people who wanted to start a Star Wars spoiler site and who've tried and stuff like that. And it's not easy. And the fact that I made it happen is that's just like the one thing. Cause I mean, so like, honestly, I feel like I am better at making music than I am at anything, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be successful at making music.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And so the fact that I have been able to have any success at all is super rewarding. And I'm just thankful to like everyone who like cares what I have to say about Star Wars, when it's spoilers or not. Like that is like, as a little nerd who just really wanted to talk about Star Wars all day, that's very, very rewarding and cool for me.
Well, as we're going to start wrapping up here, and one thing I like to do towards the end of the discussions is kind of ask 5 questions. I call them the BTG Fast 5. They don't need to answer them too quick, but I am going to keep them Star Wars based for you here.
Okay.
So the first one is one celebrity from Star Wars who you would love to have on your show.
If I could have one celebrity, obviously it would be George Lucas. I mean, because he gets softballed questions constantly because of who he is.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of questions that I want like the real answers to.
But then again, is he going to answer truthfully, or is he going to answer? Because his stories change so much. If you've read any of those making of books,
yeah,
you know,
I have. I know
from what is said in those books to what he said in interviews, they change all the time. So.
Well, you know, and I'm gonna give him slightly an out on that. Is that it? Like when it comes to like storytelling, and it sometimes you could have 2 or 3 ideas in your head at the same time.
Yeah, and
you could market those ideas in the aftermath in different ways. And then it's like that's the story. Well, it's like, well, you know, there were other moments where he had other ideas for things.
Yeah.
But it definitely does turn into a mythology for sure. And that's why there's a lot of, I think Rinsler did as good of a job as anybody ever could have done.
No, absolutely.
And so absolutely. Completely like I'm happy with the work that he gave us. But it would be George Lucas. And like when I had Ahmed on, when I was doing the interview, like there were like little like jokey things I wanted to know about. But Ahmed was like very focused and serious, as he should be, you know, he's a serious dude. But it's like when Ahmed and George are in the car together driving to work, like I want to know what are they listening to on the radio? like you know what I mean? Like what you guys have for breakfast? What do you guys usually do? Like I just want to know the little bit of the nuanced stuff. And I think that it would help kind of make that stuff maybe feel a little bit more realistic. Yeah. As opposed to just like a general mythology. But yeah, if I could ever talk to George, that would be the best.
Yeah, definitely. That would be really, really cool. All right. Number 2, favorite Star Wars movie.
My favorite Star Wars movie is going to be Revenge of the Sith. It is just, I still love it as much as when it came out, and I never had big problems with it. And it was the one I always wondered about as a child. Like as a kid, that was the one that just like captured my imagination. How does he become Darth Vader? How does the transition to Darth Vader happen? We all knew what happened. So in a weird way, our first spoiler. But that one, I just love everything about it. There's things I think could be better, obviously. They shouldn't have cut the Padme stuff. But the idea that they decided to focus on that stuff should have been moved into Attack of the Clones, I think. Yeah. But that's my favorite one though. And even with the sequel trilogy, like I feel like I have a favorite of every trilogy. But if you were going to come and you were going to be the bully and take all my Star Wars movies and go, see you later, nerd, and then you drop one, I hope it's episode 3.
Did Han shoot first?
To be honest with you, I don't care. To be honest with you, like the big thing is, I don't like. I actually like. That's such a complicated one, and I'm gonna say that he did shoot first, and I feel like as important as it was for Darth Vader to be redeemed in that message, that it is anybody could change, anybody could be better. Yeah, like that's an important, I think, cultural like lesson to pass on. That's something as huge as Star Wars is a lot of power, and showing Han Solo as having been that guy and then not being that guy is good. At the same time, I don't feel like it was really that big of a deal. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, so.
I know growing up, like when I watched it, originally I saw him shooting first, and I didn't think anything of it growing up. Like it was just like, hey, he's a scoundrel. He's a survivor, and that's how I took it. And you see his character progression, like you're saying, and it's important to see that progression.
Yeah, and I don't know if it really like actually like pays off. Like I don't know if like seeing him be a quote killer and then not, like I don't really know if we even like get that in the movie. Like at the end of Return of the Jedi, I don't even know if it. So it's like, when in the original version, we used to debate granted, we had the pan and scan copy. I don't know if that mattered or not, but we said debate is Han shooting from under the table? Like the scene was always poorly shot.
Yeah, very.
And so that's my whole thing is like, I don't really, kind of doesn't matter to me. It's kind of been wacky the whole time.
So what would you say is your most anticipated Star Wars project that's upcoming?
Ooh, it's like on one hand, it's Kenobi, because Revenge of the Sith is my favorite movie, and this one is just pretty much feels like it's the Revenge of the Sith 0.5.
Yeah.
Is what Kenobi feels like. But I'm getting the best vibes off Cassian.
Really? I have very little interest in that movie, or in that project, in that series.
Yeah. No, I get it. And that was sort of, I was like, okay, you're making Cassian, all right, cool, I guess. But everyone who works on it, they're saying like such good things about it. That's making it sound like that's like, I'm getting like the vibe Kenobi's gonna just deliver.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be happy, and I'm gonna be happy, and it's gonna be a good time. But I think Cassian is gonna be the surprise thing that actually expands Star Wars and grows it. And it's gonna be the one that, as we're following, we don't understand what's gonna happen, and we don't know the fate of all the new characters and stuff like that. So yeah, so I think I'm just gonna be unexpected and go with Cassian. And I hope when it comes out, I hope I'm right.
Yeah, definitely. So final question here, and you kind of already alluded to it, but your true thoughts on the sequel trilogy.
So my true thoughts on the sequel trilogy are that The Force Awakens is a good corporate film put together by the studio to make everybody remember why they like Star Wars. Not innovative, doesn't really push the envelope forward very much, but was very effective for the studio's aims and goals in 2015. Then I think we get to The Last Jedi, and I'm going to say it's probably my second favorite Star Wars film. And not trying to push buttons or anything like that, just simply like I really think that his depiction of Luke Skywalker was the only way to go if Luke Skywalker wasn't the main character. If he wasn't the main hero, there had to be something that went wrong with Luke. And if you were going to have him alive, beaten down, and having failed at something after all of his success was a good way to take it. And I thought the movie was super brave in that most of us have parents who fail us, or not most of us, but many of us do. And I could tell you this, no one has a parent who's a prince or a princess or a king or a queen. And when they made Rey nobody, I was like, oh, that is brave, and that is for the people. And I liked where that was going. And I was like, the idea that somebody with drunk parents could grow up to be the person who's the next Luke Skywalker. Oh, that is a beautiful message, Rian Johnson. And then we get to episode 9, where the other guy comes back and decides, oh, I want my toys back, and takes his toys back. And then, and it interfaces okay. One thing, Ryan was going to come back and do 9 for a time. And then
people forget that. People constantly forget that Ryan was going to do both.
He was
actually going to write them, right? But he was supposed to write both of them.
Yeah,
I don't know about the directing, but I know he was supposed to write 8 and 9.
Yeah, that was what they said, and then it's a ton of work.
Yeah,
but then the story as I heard it, and the stories I heard it was for people who've always told me the truth, so I'm assuming it's true and accurate. But was that at the almost last minute when Ryan was going to fly down to England to take the movie back from Trevorrow after Trevorrow had exited the picture, and to say, tear this down, keep this, and stuff like that. Michelle Rejuan made the deal for JJ, or said JJ come back, because she used to be his PA, and they're close friends. And then they ended up getting JJ back under the stipulation that he not delay the film. And that film needed another 6 months, at least. It needed more time to be written and for all of the subtleties to have been worked out. Considering that production sort of nightmare, I think he did a great job.
Is there a JJ cut?
No, that's the whole thing. That's what makes me laugh. is JJ is like people say, starts things, but is he good at finishing them? Well, we'll see. And then the answer was not necessarily. And he relies on ambiguity to get by with some of the subtleties of the storytelling, and he's successful at it to launch things, and it worked for The Force Awakens very well.
Yeah.
But in the 9th one, geez, you can't have any ambiguity on how Palpatine comes back. Why are there red stormtroopers, but then old Star Destroyers? Why are the First Order's red stormtroopers and old Star? Like, there's just these things, and it was just because it was like, well, we'll think of it later. We'll solve it later. Why is Lando's daughter in the film? Oh, now she's not Lando's daughter, but now we removed Rose, who was a central character from the previous film, and put her down to a bit role to sideline her for a new character that you cut. And it's like, ooh, those are all big mistakes. There should have been another round of reshoots that fixed those things. And I think it required a bit more bravery than JJ had in him in the time that he had. And so I think he just did the most. I think he's a betting man, and I think he did the safest bets across the board. And I don't think the movie was better for it.
They should have just done Trevorrow's script, honestly.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, and this is unpopular to some, I do think that they should have recasted Leia. I do. And then they should have done Trevorrow's script. I think it was a better script. Am I going to say it was a masterpiece? I'm sure they could have done better, but in comparison to what we got, I think it is the better of the two.
Yeah. So I read the second draft. And the first draft is what has leaked.
It's leaked, yes.
And I read the second draft, and but the truth is that it didn't get better.
It didn't get better.
It didn't get better, and gotta kind of just look at the little trend there for what was happening and how much better it didn't get. I don't expect that another draft of that was going to really truly like jump up. And the truth is, I don't think JJ would ever have directed anything that he didn't have a hand in the direct storytelling process of or writing in. And so realistically they should have just got Ryan back, or they should have went with somebody entirely new who was down to be a director and not a writer too. And and I'm so hard on that movie, but I do like it. It's just, but it is also the Star Wars movie that frustrates me the most because of what it does and what it's supposed to do and what it erased. You know, it wasn't like Rey being nobody was this big, like, surprise turn. It was simply, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And then the payoff wasn't there. Like, it wasn't a very emotional journey when she finds out she's a Palpatine. Yeah. So I love episode 8. Episode 8 is my favorite of the sequel trilogy by far. I think it's so I want more movies by Rian Johnson and less by J.J. Abrams in the future.
All right, man. Well, I do got to get going. Thank you so much for being on the show here. I definitely want to get you on again, and we can just dive into Star Wars then.
For sure.
Dive into it, for sure.
And you're welcome whenever you're free. Come on, Making Star Wars Show, hang out with us, and we'll have a good time. Same.
Perfect, man. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, man. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, dude.
All right. And there it is, everybody. That was my conversation with Jason Ward from MakingStarWars.net. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little bit about who Jason is, where he came from, and how he got to where he is. He's a great guy. I really enjoyed talking with him, and I can't wait to sit down and talk Star Wars with him. I'm definitely either going to jump on his show or have him on my show sometime in the near future where we can just nerd out, geek out about Star Wars and talk about all things. We'll probably throw it on my Shooting the Sith feed, so make sure you check that out. But everyone, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe, share this around, follow us on all the social medias, because none of this is possible without you. If you guys aren't watching it, what's the point? Now, I digress. I do love, absolutely love doing this, but I do it for you guys. I do it so you guys can learn about these content creators, learn about these people who are making things for you. And that's why I do this. So make sure you hit subscribe, that notification bell, all that jazz. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. And until next time, I will talk at all of you later.